Okay, first of all, thanks for the invitation to present Aaluis here within this workshop. There has been a really technical or more technical presentation in the last special thematic session. So I will just go briefly on and try to answer the questions we've raised in your email. So I give a short introduction about the project, who can benefit of it, some technical details just to explain the concept, and how to push accessibility forward. So what are the goals of Aaluis? The goals, or the main goal of the project is that all the adults, they can use an ICT service in their preferred way, on their preferred output device. So, and their preferred, for example, modality. So if someone wants to use it with a, I don't know, an avatar-based output, that's possible based on the preferences of the user, or it can even be adapted based on the context information, like from the environment. If it's really noisy, the first choice would be audio output. It can be changed to text output or whatever, just taking into account the environment information. So, what are the outcomes of this project? The project started 2 years ago and will last 1 more year. So the outcomes are different services developed from service providers, running on different AL platforms on, for example, Sun. They are really big care center provider. They are running the services on their platform because the idea is to detach the functionality of the service from the presentation of the service in the user interface. And this detachment is done by the Aaluis middleware layer, which is an OSGI-based layer which can be run either standalone or on other OSGI-based middleware platforms like Homer, developed by Aaate, or Universal, I see it on the list over there, or whatever. So the idea is that different stakeholder groups can benefit of the project or of the outcomes of the project. On the one hand side, end users, because they can use services in their preferred way on their preferred device, using it different input-output modalities, different text size, whatever, so similar or going into the same direction as we've seen before. User organizations, they can offer their services to the end user in his or her preferred way. And we are focusing not just on the end users, but on the developers as well. So the idea is that the service developer, he shouldn't think about how the user interface looks like. It should be not his business, but probably the business of a user interface developer. So the idea is, based on the service and the task model, to semi-automatically generate a user interface, and perhaps we can, or some user interface developer, just update the transformation within this just to make it more fancy, because we have always the problem that automatically generated user interfaces are not usable, ugly, whatever. So we try to overcome these shortcomings as well. So how does it work? Within the project we have 3 areas with always the user in mind. So from the requirements to the first trials we've already conducted, to the field trials beginning of next year. So there are some new services developed, totally detached from the user interface. So some user interfaces are generated automatically and I would say increased in terms of usability, accessibility, and just how to look. It's done by some user interface designers in the project as well. And just enhanced, for example, with automatically generated avatars or some stuff like that. and the third thing is the middleware layer. So what is the idea? We have the functionality of a service described, for example, find the user, and then we want to generate not an ugly user interface like this. Well, perhaps someone likes it, but I don't know. Probably some have problems with the contrast or the colors, so we want to do it a little bit in an automatic way based on the user preferences and the environment, etc. So we're using, at the moment, our user preferences are defined in the notation used from MyUI, but we're open to that, so we're still thinking about different models to use, and the idea is, we've seen before a tool for selecting your preferences. That's a tool, just you have to click what you need. Our idea is, that's still under development as well, is to offer some predefined preferences or sets of preferences and just link them to personas. Just so you can go through the personas, see, okay, this one is more or less like an item, so I want to use this as a starting point for designing my preferences. So how is the whole thing done? So the service provider has to provide the functionality of the service, plus a task model defined in CTT, CTT notation, and the binding, how the functions are bound to the functionality behind. Afterwards, the transformation process is done, taking into account environment factors, user preferences, device capabilities, and all this is represented in Maria XML. I don't want to go in detail here. And finally, user interface in HTML5 is generated and can be presented on any device. It has just to be Aaluis enabled, so just being via UDP connected to the framework. So, and then it can be used on a TV, smartphone, tablet, multi-touch table, that what are the devices we are aiming at the moment. So, in the next slide, I'll just go over this. That's more or less the same thing I've just explained. So, the service is totally detached from the user interface, described by the service or the CTT, and afterwards the transformation process is taking into account all the environmental information we have. Oh, sorry. So, some ideas about accessibility. So, user interfaces are adapted to needs and preferences of all the adults. It provides a consistent look and feel for each service which is provided via the Aaluis layer. Yeah, you have it supports multimodal user interaction. Yeah, so, and the main thing is that the application is totally detached from the presentation. Oops, wrong direction. So, just some facts. There is one mistake over there. Aaluis is written with 2 A's and not 3. So it's about ambient assisted living user interfaces. But no worries, I recognized it over there. Yeah, it still runs for 1 year. We are happy to be in contact with everybody. There's already a lot of discussion. There was some discussion with Gottfried and his team about all, and yeah, we have already some good ideas
about what?
For example, from our side, the preferences and GPII, the preference sets, would be an interesting thing for us. On the other hand side, it was about the task model, I think. And yeah, and the persona based approach for defining or for choosing the the user settings. So because they just can choose and then adapt them if they need to be changed.
Sorry, what are the kind of adaptations you can manage in when you create these interfaces?
For example, at the moment, we have the first prototype running now. The second one is under development right now. So, for example, we can do like shown before with the contrasts, font size. We can use different modalities as well. So not just text output, but if someone prefers, for example, an avatar talking to you, it's possible as well. What else can I think of at the moment? Yeah, the thing is that was mentioned before that resources, for example, the video for sign language, has to be provided. So that's not automatically generated at the moment. But for example, an avatar presenting the text, that's automatically generated on the fly. So, for example.
I would also like to ask about your pilots. Have you realized any pilot testing yet, and if yes, where?
The thing is, the pilots so far they have been run in Austria.
Only Austria.
Only Austria, yes. I know that's always a shortcoming about not covering all Europe, but the idea, first of all, our end user organizations they are from Austria, so involved in the project. So that's why it's a little bit limited as well. We were asked at the mid-term review meeting as well, and as I'm the coordinator of the project, and I said, okay, yeah, the end user organizations in Austria, you can give us some extra money, then we go to Spain, no problem. And they said it was a little bit of a critic from their side, but then I said, why have you evaluated it in a positive way? So we know that it's a problem, but we have the companies from for example, Berkeley Sun, they are located in the Netherlands, but in Spain, Germany, they're operating in 12 countries, so we have their experience as well.
Okay, because I was wondering maybe we could share users somehow, since our pilot participants are familiar with our system and your participants are familiar with your system. If we show the ones the other, it will be beneficial.
That's a good way. It's just sometimes for example, for comparing exchange.
And also, I would like to ask you about the context. You said that the context will be also included in the adaptation of the interface. So, since we are also developing at the moment how we are going to integrate the concept in the whole design process, have you created some specific rules that maybe we could?
We are working on that as well. So that's at the moment it's about some rules in there, but that's the thing we're working on as well.
We can be in contact about the context, since we are at the moment working on it. Okay.
Just to add, so we've been in communication for the past months. Actually, we had a joint workshop in Stuttgart. I mentioned that, I believe. We see a lot of commonalities. Of course, it's always difficult if you're 2/3 into the project already. We're half into our project. It's always difficult to share resources. But I think what we can really take and learn from each other is using how to use standards. For example, preferences or task models, things that have been standardized. So rather than sharing code is always hard, but sharing formats is something that seems to work quite well, and don't underestimate the impact. If we share the preference model or task model, that's a lot of impact.
Yeah, that's the problem with sharing end users. You need extra resources to test with them. So because if we use end users
in our pilots, within our pilots.
Yeah, but the thing is still there is someone from the Aaluis project go there and just explain it and be there.
Right.
So it's extra resources which are not planned yet.
It will take longer.
Yeah,
if we give them some extra our subjects, and if we run through your tests together with them, will take double time, and everything will be just much more work. But unless we manage to make one test or two, but I doubt if that's possible.
Or if we do it remotely somehow.
Yeah, that is something we need to think about anyway.
Yes. For our, yes, please.
are you aware of of the W3C community groups,
Yes.
which would allow you to quickly come together and
Ah,
propose
okay.
something? So the community group is different from a working group.
Ah, okay, okay,
Not-
sorry.
Yeah, anybody can create a working. Community group.
A community group. Yeah.
Office.
Okay.
So you can just go register and put, say, you have a format that you'd like to propose, and when there's sufficient critical mass surrounding around this, it could continue to proper standardization. So it's like de jure or ad hoc standards.
We were actually talking about that in the last session, and so one working group that's really close to this is the model-based UI.
Yeah.
And I've been following this quite a bit, but for just time reasons, actually haven't been part of it yet. But we see, I think what we see is that this group is doing things that are very core to what we're doing, but they seem to lack accessibility knowledge. So, we need to think about how we can have an impact on that group. I don't think it. I mean, you have more insight. I think that it's not too late to join them, or do they have contact with them, model-based interfaces?
Yeah, sure. But I was thinking of something easier in entry, because as you say, you know, if the standard's already running, trying to add features or bring something in, that usually has a bit of an overhead. But if you already have some formats, like, I don't know, description models or something, you could just bring that in as a
We try to base, for example, on the model-based working
Maria
group.
XML
Maria
is the
XML and
predecessor
CTT
of
that's
this group.
yeah, and CTT that's in there as well.
Yeah.
So that's we try to base on.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I have to say.